How about the latest news from the FDA about emergency use? You have said before that emergency use would have to meet some really strict guidelines. Is this just reiterating that, or does it go further, the latest that we saw from that agency?
Yeah, I think it's consistent with the kinds of principles that we've been talking about. Emergency use is going to be a high bar. The agency is not going to change its standard for safety and effectiveness or its sort of gold standard for balancing risk and benefit. What they're going to do is find a population for whom the risks of COVID are so high that any theoretical risks that could be associated with the vaccine that you don't have long-term follow-up data on are reasonable risks to take relative to the perceived benefit of getting a vaccine earlier to certain groups of patients. And so you think about people who are older, living in congregate settings like nursing homes, maybe frontline healthcare workers who are more likely to be exposed to a COVID patient. I think the reality is there's not going to be an emergency use authorization before the election, just if you look at the timing of when data could be available in the most optimistic scenario, and then the fact that it would take the FDA at least 2 to 4 weeks to turn around an EUA. So I think after the election, you're going to see perceptions change about the appropriateness of issuing an EUA, a very narrow EUA for certain populations, especially if we head into a fall where there's a lot of infection and we see hospitalizations go back up, we see deaths start to go back up. I think doctors and others are going to feel differently about making the vaccine available early for very select groups of patients and people who are at very high risk from COVID while we continue to collect information. I mean, the reality is that an EUA for this vaccine isn't going to look like an approval. What it's going to look like is a continuation of the clinical trials where we make it available for very select groups of patients and continue to collect data in some kind of registry. And this is what we would typically do, where we might make a vaccine available in a staged fashion in sort of registries, large registries, while we continue to collect safety data on the new patients and continue to allow the original data set to mature.
So, Scott, you really just did say that that's not possible until after the election. So we have it's being politicized. You could say that you could cast blame on both sides of the issue. There's no doubt. So people don't want it because you would doubt whether it was legit before the election because of political pressure, but that could cause you to not use this EUA for people that really need it because you're waiting to not look political until after the election. It's just not good either way.
Just look, it's just the timing. The reality is that the timing of when you could potentially have data, even under an optimistic scenario, on one of these vaccines, and the fact that it's going to take the FDA 2 to 4 weeks. Well, it's going to be after the election because even if a company had data late October, early November, FDA just can't. First of all, the company can't file the data in 24 hours, and second of all, FDA can't turn around an EUA in less than 2 to 4 weeks. And so they're going to bring it before their advisory committee. They're going to go through the data carefully. So that pushes you past the election.